Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Hard 100, a video series documenting the culling of my collection from what it is to what it's going to be, and that is a Hard 100 games. How many times do you have to play a game before you genuinely feel like you've seen everything that game has to offer? Is it once? Is it twice? Is it 3 times a lady? The game we're talking about today is a game that I played a handful of times, and I have greatly enjoyed it every time that I have played. And then I goodly enjoyed it every time I played it, and then I enjoyed it, and now I feel it's kind of run its course, maybe. Ladies and gentlemen, I know everything is better when you add 2 simple words to it, and the 2 words we're adding today are Clank in Space! Clank in Space, a deck building adventure by Paul Denon and Renegade Games, is a game in which you or a handful of players are going in a spaceship to try to make as much noise as possible and get all that beautiful treasure and GT the fuck out. What this game has you doing is utilizing a deck builder in order to fuel your dungeon crawler. That's like the 6th time I had to record that because I couldn't figure out what to say. For those of you who have never played a deck builder, all this is you start with a hand of cards, and then you use these cards to buy other cards and use those cards to do other things, and then ultimately win the game by getting points. The way you win this game is by getting your little duder all the way to pick up a treasure and then getting out of the ship. On your turn, you're gonna draw 5 cards, 6 cards, whatever. You have to check because every deck builder is different. It's either 5 or 6 cards or 4 cards. You draw your allotted number of cards and you play them all to the table. And these cards will have one of 3 things. They will either have the currency of the game, which allows you to purchase the cards on the table. The purchase amount can be found in the bottom right-hand corner. They will have a number of swords, which you can use to attack some of the things in the adventure action row thing. Or they will have feet. The feet are what allow you to move through the ship, and sometimes the requisite to move from one room to another room is not only a foot, but you may also have to have either an additional foot or an additional sword to fight a monster to get through, etc., etc. And also some things could possibly have bonuses. So for example, if you have a monster that has an ability that says draw a card, you draw the card. But if the monster says draw a card and then it has a little box under it with a little symbol that says, oh, if you played one of these things this turn, you also get to do this ability. So there's some combo potential between the 3 factions that are in this game. Now, I do enjoy a good Clank in Space. I have played original Clank and I enjoyed it. I thought it was really, really fun. I like the idea of making noise and just the general deck building. I can't decide what I like more. I don't know if I like a deck builder that has a row of cards, legendary style, this style, where it's a constant turn of new things each round, or if I prefer a more Dominion, Thunderstone, Train style, where these are the 9 cards that are out, pick your cards, and that's it. You have to build your engine around this. There's no real chance behind it. I don't know what I like more. This one kind of does a little bit of both. There are the cards in the row that obviously will change every single turn, but there's also a handful of cards that are static every turn, and you can get those, and then there are ways to cull cards out of your deck in typical deck building fashion. Now, in order to pick up that treasure at the end, there are 3 modules on the board. The board is also fully changeable, so you can change out things. But so you have to go and end a space in 2 different rooms on 2 different modules to build your little green cube. And then once you've done that, you get a token that allows you to get into the last part of the ship to get your token. And these tokens are everything from Game Boys to Infinity Gauntlets to other things. We'll talk about that in a second. So whenever you do something major, so whenever you build your second terminal and you get your unlock token to get into the ship, Arrakis, who is this bad looking dude right here, gets angry and moves up. Also, you'll find Mr. Arrakis on some of the cards that show up in the row, and this is where the Clank comes in. Anytime you make noise or anything like that, it's gonna tell you to add Clank. When you add Clank, you add it to a spot on the board, and whenever homeboy back here attacks, you take all that Clank, dump it in a bag, and there's a whole bunch of cubes in this bag. They're all black, and then plus the colors of all the players that are making noise on the ship. And depending on how angry he is, you draw a certain number of cubes from the bag, you add it to damage, and you do have the ability to die in this game. And depending on how far you are in the game will depend on if you are out, or if you are out but you still count your score. I've had issues with this in the past with Escape Plan and Gugong, but this one, you really have a lot of ways to mitigate whether or not you die, and you really have a lot of ways to make that not happen. And then later you can get attacked by bounty hunters that attack everyone if you pull their cube out, and that's the game. There are also ways to move around the board where you can take a lift or a teleport, or you can go to the market and buy additional things. But really all the game has you doing is playing all the cards from your hand to move your little cute little pawn all the way to do objective A, objective B, then get the treasure, then get out. That's it. So it's basically a treasure hunting game on a ship that can change. There's also an expansion in here for Apocalypse that allows the black cubes to fuel some type of agenda, which is really fun as well. There's also an app that allows you to campaign solo. It also gives you different configurations if you can't figure out how you want to play the different boards, which is a nice touch. Let's do some housekeeping. 2 to 4 players. This is technically 1 to 4 players because the app does offer solo play and it will tell you what cards to remove from the middle row when you play it, which is a nice touch. 45 to 90 minutes. We'll talk about that in a second. And ages 12 and up. It's a lot to keep track of. It's a standard deck builder with a lot of words on the cards. Now, that playtime is a little rough. That playtime seems really, really long. This, as I mentioned before, this is a 45-minute game. It shouldn't be any longer than 45 minutes, maybe 60 tops. This is not an hour-and-a-half experience. No, this is a 45 to 60-minute experience, so it can feel a little long if people are taking their time around the table and they're taking their turns on time, etc., etc. Now, oddly enough, the best game I can compare this to, not as far as mechanics, because it's just a deck builder that moves you through the dungeon and it's really interesting, but the theme. Anything is made better by it being a space something. So for example, Twilight Imperium, you want cats? No, 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 space cats. You want to go Starship Catan? Here's some wheat. No, 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 space wheat. Oh, we're playing Rex. You want some money? No, 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 space bucks. This uses the space theme as a very tongue-in-cheek way of making a ton of science fiction references, which are funny-ish the first time and borderline eye-rolling later. Much in the same way as Munchkin. Star Munchkin specifically have made the same jokes, so instead of it being a Terminator, it's an Exterminator. Instead of being a Dalek, it's instead of Eradicate, it's something else. Instead of a Quantum Spammer or a Sonic Screwdriver, it's whatever's in this one. Instead of it being a Jedi, it's a Jadu. The jokes run really thin, and it's kind of, oh, I get it, but it's not funny. There are the red shirts, boldly go, I get it. There's a lot of references, and the first time you play, you're like, how that's cute, how that's cute. But by the end, you're just like, all right, come on, what is this referencing? Oh, that's Riddick. Oh, that's a Predator. I wish it was Riddick and a Predator. But that takes nothing away from how fun the game is at the beginning. But the more you play it, the more you see these jokes, the more you start to see, okay, well, these are the kind of cards I'd want to go for. Okay, the Detron cycle, that's pretty cool. Okay, and I'm done. Clank in Space. If you have never played Clank in Space, go buy Clank in Space. You're gonna play it a dozen times and you're gonna love every single game up until about game 9, 10, and 11. Because as you play the game more, it starts to kind of wear and tear and show its cracks, as it were. There are other deck builder games that I have, like Legendary Alien, which is scenario-based, but still is more tense and interesting than this one. Let's talk about something that I have a problem with all deck builders, not just this one. I'm not gonna throw this one under the bus, but this is one of the first deck builders we specifically talked about. So let me talk about one of the things I absolutely hate about deck builders, and that is playing your entire hand every time. I hate that. I hate that I can't hold my hand to save for a future turn or anything like that. I hate that it's always, here's everything, there's everything. Here's everything, there's everything. A lot of deck builders do this. I've seen some deck builders that don't. I wish this one didn't, and of course you can always house rule it, because I will always have a combo that I'm looking for, and I would rather slow here than to never actually speed up. And it's one of those things like, oh, I have a really good combo in here. I wish I could save some of these cards and use it at least once in the game, but it never happens. Clank in Space is a fine game. I recommend you play it if you have not played it. I recommend you buy it if you really like a tongue-in-cheek theme. However, it's not an original spacey theme. They're not trying to tell their own Twilight story here. This is a very good game. There's only been one expansion for it, but there has been a shit ton of expansions for the other Clank, and I think that's maybe where a lot of the variety has come from in the other one, where I feel like that one might have a little bit of staying power, even if I'm not a fan of the fantasy theme. So Clank in Space, reluctantly out of my hard 100. I'll be sad to see it go, but I don't feel like I haven't seen everything this game has to offer. I have played the shit out of it. and I've had a pretty good time, but I'm just done with it. And when I'm looking at it, I feel like that's going to happen with a lot of the games that I've kept, and I wish I would have had this mentality when I've been doing my hard 100 the entire time, where I need to know what my replay value is going to be, not just my gut reaction of, oh, that was a fun game. Will I get it to the table? Setting up the board, setting up all the little tokens on the board, kind of a hassle. The box is not big enough for the base components, let alone any kind of expansions they may offer in the future. Not a bad game, but I'm done with it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on this, the latest edition of the Hard 100. I hope you and yours are well. Peace out.